What's up everybody, welcome back. In today's video we're gonna finish the optimization with the soft object references. So we're gonna tackle our weapons info table. And some of you guys in the comments asked me about the rep notifies versus the multicasts, if I could give an explanation why using rep notifies would be better. I can't really give a technical explanation, but I can show you that it does definitely use less bandwidth. So I'm gonna quickly show you guys how you can use the network profiler to have a look at things like that, and we'll do that after the soft object references. So first of all, let's dive into our weapon structure. Let's go to the weapons folder, and we have our s_weapon_info structure. And in here we have quite a lot of assets we can turn into soft object references. So that's what we're gonna do. So everything that's an asset, the skeletal mesh, the animation sequence, animation montages, all of that stuff, we're going to turn those into soft object references. So let's just start with the skeletal mesh. And just make sure you select the same asset type as you did before, but just change it to a soft object reference. So especially with the animations, we have anim sequence, we have anim montage, so make sure you grab the correct variable type if you change it. So I'm just gonna pause the video and change all of these assets as well, and then I'll be back. So I'm back and everything is changed. So we have the skeletal mesh, the sound cue, animations over here, 2 blend spaces, a particle system, texture 2D, and an animation montage all the way at the bottom. So those are all the things that are soft object references. Now we're going to save the structure and we're going to close everything down. So also close down the project and don't save all of the other assets. So don't save and relaunch the project. So the project is back up and running, and now we need to fix everything that we broke. So first of all, let's start in the character. Let's go to characters folder and to our hero base character. And right in here, we need to fix our SetWeaponCosmetics function. So if we take a look at this function, so there's all of the assets that we replaced. So we need to async load them, and we can't do that inside of a function. So we're going to convert this function back to an event. So on the left side here, we're going to right click SetWeaponCosmetics and then convert function to event. And then we'll end up with something like this. So let's give this some proper room. I think this is everything. There we go. And now we simply need to replace all of this. So we're going to grab the weapon mesh, for example, and we're going to async load asset. And then from the async load asset, we need to cast it. So again, if you forgot what variable type it was, simply hover over the structure and it will tell you what you selected in the data table. So we have a skeletal mesh over here. So we're going to cast it to a skeletal mesh. And then I'm going to use pure casts and plug it into our set skeletal mesh node. So I'm going to disconnect this one and then connect it to the completed pin and plug in the new mesh. There we go. So we want to connect the async load asset to the row found pin. And then for all of these variables, we don't need to wait until the mesh is loaded. So we're going to simply continue from the upper pin over here, and we're going to set all of these variables. So for the fire sound, for example, we can async load the asset again. And then we simply want to cast it to a sound cue. And then we can plug it back into our setter. So again, we want to connect this one to the completed pin, plug in the asset, and then from the other pin, we're going to continue to the next one. So we're going to connect these one up like this, from the upper pin to the next one, and at the end they are all dead ends, so they won't continue till the next one. And that's basically all we need to do for all of these. So let's grab our weapon fire animation, and this is an animation sequence. So we want to async load asset, And then we're going to cast it to an animation sequence. So we can plug it back into our setter. So let's just disconnect this to make it less messy. So this goes into the completed pin and then plug in the asset. And we're going to connect this one to the previous one to the upper pin. The next one is the reload animation. So we can grab these nodes. They are the same asset type. And we're going to grab the reload animation, plug this one in the upper pin. And then we simply want to set the animation variable over here. So plug this one into the completed pin and move the pins over. And that should be good. So I'm going to make a little bit of room over here. The next one is an animation montage. So that's the character fire montage over here. So again, async load asset. And this time we're going to cast it to an animation montage. I'm going to use a pure cast again and then simply move over the setter and plug that one into the completed pin. So the next one is an animation montage as well. So we can copy and paste this. And then we're going to grab our character reload montage. So we want to grab the setter over here, plug it into the completed pin, move over the asset pin, and make sure we connect all of the async load asset nodes as well. And then over here we have a particle system, so that's our muzzle flash. And we need the soft object reference, so that's over here. And we want to async load asset and cast it to a particle system. Again, I'm using a pure cast, and I'm going to grab my setter over here and simply move it over. And then the last ones over here are animation sequences. So we already have those over here. So I'm simply going to copy and paste these nodes and paste them over here. So we have the character ADS idle. And then the character hip idle. So we need these setters. And move everything over. There we go. Connect up the execution pins. And that should be good as well. And then over here we have two blend spaces. So we want to cast those to a blend space. So first we need to async load asset. And then cast to blend space. There we go. So we want to do this twice. And then this is our aim offset for the hip. There we go. So we can grab these setters over here and connect them up. So this goes into the completed pin, plug in the asset, and this one over here. And then we only have our melee montage left, so that's an animation montage. So over here, we're gonna async load asset for the last time. And this time cast it to an animation montage again. And grab the setter over here. Nope. So again, this goes in the completed pin. Move over the asset pin. And connect this one up over here. So then we have to grab our setters for the muzzle socket and the shell eject socket because those aren't connected anymore. So I'm simply going to move them to the bottom over here, connect them to the upper pin of this async load asset so they will be set as well. And after that we simply want to plug it into the isLocallyControlled branch to set our HUD values. So this should be good to go. Let's make sure all of the pins are connected on the async load asset node. And that looks good. So let's compile and save it. And let's see over here. So this is inside of our holster weapon function. We're going to get to that next. So to fix the holster weapon function, we need to create a custom event to load our weapon mesh. So we're going to do that first. So let's look for an empty spot in our event graph, and we're going to create a custom event. And this is called load holstered weapon mesh. And for this one, we want to give it two inputs. So we're going to give it a component input and the soft object reference input. So first of all, let's do the component. So that's our mesh component. And that's a skeletal mesh component. So if you're using 5.1, this could have a slightly different name, like a skinned asset or something like that, possibly. So nothing really changed. Just make sure you select the most similar one and you should be good. So that's a skeletal mesh component, not a normal skeletal mesh. So that's my mistake. Skeletal mesh component. Make sure you grab the component one. And then we need the new mesh as a soft object reference. So new mesh. And that's a skeletal mesh. And from the skeletal mesh, we're going to select the soft object reference. Now, first of all, we need to async load asset. So we're going to drag off here, async load the mesh, and we need to cast it to a skeletal mesh. Skeletal mesh, there we go. And after we did the cast, we simply want to set the component to that skeletal mesh. So we're going to set the skeletal mesh, and in 5.1 this is called set skinned asset and update, I think, something like that. Set skinned asset, I think. So we want to plug this into the completed pin and then plug in the mesh over here. So we have this event good to go, and now we can go inside of our holster weapon function. And inside of the holster weapon function, we actually use our weapon mesh. So this time it's a soft object reference, so we need to change that. And currently we're using a local variable for the weapon mesh. So we're just going to get rid of that one, and we're simply going to pass everything onto our new event. So if we scroll a little bit to the right, over here we have the set skeletal mesh node, and here we can simply replace the call with our new event. So we're going to call our load holstered weapon mesh. So just plug that one in over here. For the mesh component, we can grab the pin that returns from the add skeletal mesh component. So we simply want to plug that one in over here. And then we can grab the soft object mesh reference directly from the data table and plug it in over here. So that should be good to go, and then we can actually get rid of our local weapon mesh component because we're, the local weapon mesh variable, because we're not using that anymore. So you can simply delete that one. And over here, you can actually delete it from the list as well. So compile and save that one, and we should have our character fixed and good to go. So now the easiest thing to do is simply right click this get data table row for the weapon info table, and we're going to find the references. So in this character we already fixed everything, there's no compile errors, so we should be good to go. We can click the little binocular over here, and then we actually see there's quite a lot more of these. So we don't need to worry about the hero base. In the pickup base, I don't think we need to fix anything. We already did that, by the way. We started with the pickups in another series, so that makes sense. Let me grab my search window. So we have the pickup weapon, we can skip that one as well. The menu controller, So in the player controller, there's actually 2 references, and we do need to fix those. So let's go to our menu player controller and let's start with the enter loadout menu. So in here, we can simply grab our lobby animation. So let's hide all of the unconnected pins. So we're using the weapon mesh and the character hip idle animation. Let me double check over here. So we can simply async load those assets. So there's not really anything too special about this event, except we need a little bit of extra room. So I hit the pins that we need. So we need our weapon mesh and our character hip idle. So that's the weapon mesh over here and the character hip idle. So we're gonna async load our mesh, plug this one into the row found pin. Then we need to cast it to our skeletal mesh. Skeletal mesh. Oh, really? I'm gonna use a pure cast. So we want to plug this one into the completed pin and then move over the mesh pin. Now we don't really need to wait until the skin is loaded. So we can simply grab the async load asset for the animation. And we can connect this one to the upper pin of the previous async load asset. So let's disconnect the set skeletal mesh node and make a little bit more room over here. So this is connected like so. And then we're gonna grab our animation, and that's actually an animation sequence. So we're gonna cast to an animation sequence and then plug it back into the play animation node and plug this into the completed pin. And then we can grab the upper pin over here and actually connect it to the get all actors class. So you want to disconnect the play animation node and continue from the upper pin of the async load asset. So the loading branches are all dead ends and the upper branches are connected to the rest of the execution. So this should fix our enter loadout menu. And then we also have another reference over here inside of our update loadout character. So that should be a little bit down here. So again, we're using the weapon mesh and the character hip idle. So we can actually just grab these nodes over here. Async load asset, cache to animation sequence, and then the async load, over here. So the cast to the skeletal mesh and then the animation sequence. And then we're gonna go to our update loadout character and we can simply move the pins over. So the row found pin goes in the first async load asset, and over here we want to load our weapon mesh. So if this is completed, we're gonna set the mesh, plug it into the completed pin, disconnect the set skeletal mesh node. So from the upper pin, continue to the next async load asset. And over here we need our character hip idle. So that's over here. Plug it into the async load asset. We're gonna cast it to an animation sequence and then play the animation. So this goes in the completed pin. And this is connected like so. So that should fix our menu controller as well. So if we take a look at our search results again, we have our widget button weapon inventory and the widget for the loadout menu. So let's start in the loadout menu because that's at the top of my notes. So we're going to open our widget blueprint loadout menu. And in here, oh, this is only using the weapon type, so that's not really that important. Let me double check. So we should have our update weapon info. And in here, there it is. We're actually using the HUD icon and we need to fix this one. So this is set all the way at the end over here. We're using a local variable and we don't really need to do that anymore. So first of all, let's go to our event graph and we need to create a custom event to actually load the HUD icon. So let's create a custom event and call this load HUD icon. So we need a texture 2D as a soft object reference. So we're going to add that one as an input, texture 2D. And that's a texture 2D. And then select the soft object reference. And we also need our image. So that's an image object, the actual widget image. So let's just call that a target image. And then we want to change it into an image object. Oh, really? Oh, no. So it's probably just called image. There we go. Yeah, this is the one we need. So the image with the little square icon. And if you select it over here, it says image object reference. So we can drag off the texture and we want to async load the asset. And if it's loaded, we want to cast it to a texture 2D. And then simply set the brush from texture. So drag off the image object and set brush from texture. From texture over here. So plug it into the completed pin and then plug in the actual texture. So this is good to go. And then we can go back to our UpdateWeaponInfo. And over here we need to make a few changes. So right now we're checking if the local HUD icon is empty or not. And we want to replace that with a check for the valid soft object reference. So let's just grab this branch over here and we're going to add a new branch. We're going to grab our local HUD icon. So let's just change this one into a soft object reference. We're going to select the local variable and we actually want to change it. Okay, and it's not in the list over here, so that's nice. There we go. So over here we have local icon and that's a texture 2D. So we're going to change this to a texture 2D soft object reference. Yes, I want to change it. So now we can grab the soft object reference over here from the data table. There we go. And we can disconnect the old one. So it's stored inside of our local variable. And then over here, we want to grab our local HUD icon and we want to know if this is a valid soft object reference. So is valid or not. Plug it into our branch. Now we need to take care. Over here, we're checking if it's empty and over here, we're checking if it's valid. So we actually need to flip over the two true and the false pin. So we can grab our set brush from the set brush tint and then paste it over here. But this time we want to connect this one to the false pin. And then if we grab the lower one with the white image, we want to connect that one to the true pin over here. Then obviously we need our local image icon to plug in there. So that's the target for the set brush tint color. And then for the lower branch, we want to call our load HUD icon. So load HUD icon event that we just created. Over here, we can plug in our soft object reference to the texture. And then for the image icon, that's actually the target image. So we can plug that one into the load HUD icon node. And if this is actually false, then we want to clear the image. So we're going to drag off the image icon and we're going to set the brush from texture. But this time we're simply going to leave it empty. So plug that one in over here. And then we want to make sure that we plug both back into the set compare values over here. So that should work. And then we can get rid of this part over here. And then we have our set brush from texture, and that's actually one that we replaced. So we can get rid of this node as well, because right now we're doing that over here. So disconnect this one and plug it directly into the branch. Delete this. And now this is all we need over here. So we're checking if it's a valid reference. If it's not, we're clearing the image, and if it's true, we're setting it back to the normal opacity and we're loading it. And so that should be good to go as well. We can compile and save that one. And then all we should have left is our button weapon inventory. So let's grab our search results again. And over here, the button weapon inventory. So if we look over here, again, we are probably using the HUD icon. Yes, we are. So we need to fix that one. And that's pretty simple. We can just grab our HUD icon soft object reference, and all the way at the beginning over here, that doesn't really matter. We're going to async load asset. And then we want to cast it to our texture 2D. And then we can simply set it. So that's our border icon. Let's see where this pin goes, all the way at the end. So we can simply grab this node, move it over here, connect it to the completed pin, and move over the asset. So this goes into the row found pin, and then we can grab the upper pin over here to continue directly while the asset is loading. So that should be good to go as well. Let's compile and save that one. And we actually have our data table sorted. And this was a pretty beefy one. So if we go inside of our weapons info table, to make sure it updates, I'm going to add a row and remove it again, save it, and then look at the reference viewer. So right now you can see all of these assets with pink lines are actually soft object references. So they won't be loaded by default, only if we tell the game to load them. And as you can see, there's really a lot of them in here. So this should actually make a little bit of difference. So we have our weapons info table done. Now I want to take a quick look at the network profiler and how you can use that. So the network profiler. First of all, let's take a look at the profiler itself, and after that I'm going to show you the difference between a multicast and a rep notify inside of the network profiler. So that's actually a tool you can use to check out the performance and the usage of the bandwidth of your project. So first of all, let's take a look at how we can do that. And to do that, you need access to the console. And by default, the keybind for me doesn't really work. So I want to go to Editor Preferences and then simply look for the console. And over here, the console command to open it, I changed it to my numpad minus because the default ~1 doesn't really work out for me. So make sure you know the correct keybind and that it's actually working. Now we can open up a project. So we have a 2-player game, for example. And over here, if we open up the console, we can type net profile. And if we hit enter, this will start recording the session. So this is just an on-off switch. If you type it again, it will stop recording. And you have to keep in mind that the session that you are recording can be the client or the host. So it does make a difference in which screen you actually activate it. So for example, if I would host a game with the left window over here, then it probably makes the most sense to activate the network profiler in the host window because the host does most of the replication, obviously. So you want to open up the console and then type net profile. So I just hit enter and it will start recording, and then you can simply play a game or do a session or whatever you like, and at the end you want to open the console again and simply hit net profile again to stop recording. So if we did that, you want to navigate to the folder of your project. So let's go to the Explorer window and then move to the root folder of the project, go to saved, and inside saved you will have a folder called profiling. And in here is a new file created with an nprof extension. So this is for the network profiler. This is the profile or the recording that we just did. And how are you going to use this? Well, you need to open a separate program. So you want to go to the folder where the engine is installed. So we're going to go to Epic Games. And in my case, I'm using 5.0. So I'm going to open the 5.0 engine, then go to the engine folder, binaries, and then .NET. And inside of this folder, we have an exe called Network Profiler. So we can open this one up. And this is the actual Network Profiler. And at the top here, you have an Open File button. And in here, you can open the nprof files. So I already recorded one for the multicast project and with the rep notifies replaced. And what I did was load a free-for-all game where the players would stand in front of each other. Then I would have the client empty his pistol magazine, so fire 12 shots, and then close the recording again. So we have a similar profile for both games where the weapon is fired 12 times and there is event for the for the weapon FX, so the multicast that we replaced for the fire weapon events. And then we also have the event for let me double check, so I'm just going to open it quickly. So we replaced the play fire sound, play fire montage and the bullet FX, and we actually put those in a one rep notify, or sorry, the muzzle flash, the fire sound and the montage, and then we have the bullet FX one, and that's the one we did with a structure. So we have different multicasts and rep notifies that you can see. So I'm going to open both of the projects. So the left one is the the multicast one, and then I'm going to open the network profiler again. And for this one, I'm going to open the rep notify project. There we go. So for the multicast, you want to go to the RPC tab over here, and there you can see all the multicasts. And then for the rep notifies, you want to go to the properties tab, and then I'm going to sort them by average size. So you can immediately see for the upper one, we have the multicast bullet FX. So this is the multicast version. This took 50 bytes and 403 bits. And if we do that with a rep notify, we actually save a little bit. So it's not too much because we're still passing on variables and that stuff needs to be replicated. So over here, there's no huge difference, but there still is a little bit of a difference. So as you can see, 47.4, and over here we have 50.4. But the bigger difference is for our normal multicast. So these are the multicast events that didn't have an input and didn't pass on any variables. And you can see over here the average size 1.9 and then 15 bits. And if we go to our rep fire weapon events, it's actually 0.1 byte and then 1 bit. So that's a pretty significant difference, especially if you do this for an automatic fire weapon, for example, and this event fires a lot of times. So you can see over here 1.9 for 15 and over here 0.1 to 1. So that's definitely an improvement. So yeah, that's kind of the network profiler. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with it. I'm not going to pretend I know everything in here because I definitely don't, and I don't use it a whole lot, but every now and then it is a pretty useful tool. So you can pretty easily identify which things are taking a lot of bandwidth, if there's any peaks in the graph, stuff like that. So it's definitely worth to play around with if you intend to release your game and actually optimize it. So the network profiler, done as well. So I think that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like. And if you want to get your hands on the project file, you can become a member of the channel or become a Patreon. And you will get access to the premium channels in the Discord, which will also give you access to the project file. So thanks for watching, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye bye.